Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Red Pill Podcast 216, and I hope you're all having an amazing weekend so far. And here we are. It's a Sunday, and we just had Bitcoin close its highest daily candle ever in its history. A very rare Sunday pump, which is interesting since it's actually more common if we are to have a major move on a Sunday. It's typically a correction. So in this instance, we can look back at the past couple examples of this happening, which were on March 24th, just a couple months ago. You can see this candle here on the 23rd into the 24th of March, about 2.7% up on that Sunday, extending into the Monday, and then this stalled out, followed by a correction that would have filled that CME gap that formed on this pump into the weekend. And if I show you really quickly just what the hourly candles look like on this whole move, it's unbelievable. So we're looking at this on the hourly, a little bit of a grind up into the start of Sunday, then this major move to the upside, followed by all of these gains coming back, and then a skyrocketing move right back up even higher. This is very rare to see. So this is clear manipulation, especially for the fact that it's happening on a Sunday. And we don't throw that word around loosely here. You guys know that. So this is clear manipulation. And another example when we had a major move up on a Sunday would be right here, March 2nd. Perhaps some of you remember this. This was when Trump's Truth Social post came out on the Sunday. We saw insane volume, and then the following Monday pretty much came right back down to where we started earlier that past week. So this filled the CME gap effectively the next day. Then we have a little bit at the end of last year, this move on December 15th, which is quite interesting because we were pushing up into our all-time highs at the time, which still so far is still the case. And once we made it up to about this Monday, you can see also stalling out Monday, Tuesday, returning to the downside, filling that CME gap that would have formed over that weekend. And there's other more extreme examples, but I just wanted to address this immediately at the start of today's Red Pill, since I'm sure so many of you are wondering what's going on today and why is it so volatile. So just be aware that in the past 30 weeks, only 3 times Bitcoin was up about 3% or more during a Sunday. And following those 3 examples was a correction to not only fill that lower CME gap, but in some cases have a pretty notable correction. And that is definitely more likely to be the case when you're at these extremes in the chart. And you can see we are pushing up very close to all-time highs from just moments before I started filming this to our current all-time high. It's only a 2% move. I mean, pretty much by the end of me filming this, we could definitely be at all-time highs. So that's the kind of market that we're dealing with today. So of course, since this market is moving rapidly, by the time you started watching this podcast in your time zone, Bitcoin could already be closer to where the CME closed this past Friday, or we could be pushing up even higher on Monday into 108K and so on, and hitting a new all-time high and leaving that gap to be filled at a later date. It's happened before, so yes, it can happen again. And those 2 of 3 examples that I gave you showed Bitcoin in fact did push higher into Monday, which so far is kind of truth, but we haven't had the traditional markets open just yet. So just pointing that out. And then even into Tuesday, we've had any of the highs that happened on that Monday could be retested. But then once Wednesday rolled around, like over here, this would be Wednesday, December 18th. And then you have over here, this would be on Wednesday, March 26th. You can see some weakness. So a lot could happen over the next 48 hours. And I'm sure you appreciate me opening up today's Red Pill with that immediate value. And now, since we have a lot to cover, let's dive into today's Red Pill podcast. But quickly, before we get started, as always, make sure to get comfortable. Grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea if it's a little bit earlier in the day, or a glass of wine or beer or any beverage of your choice if it's getting a little bit later in the matrix. And Also, make sure to comment below this post here on Patreon to vote on the altcoins that you'd like me to cover in next week's Red Pill podcast. And before you leave a comment, just make sure you use the search function here on Patreon to check that I have not covered that project in at least 3 months. So if it's been over 3 months since I reviewed that altcoin, or if I've never covered that altcoin before, as long as it has at least 1 year of chart history, you can go ahead and comment below with the name of that altcoin and include the ticker symbol as well. And whatever submissions get the most likes, those top 4 will be selected for next week's Red Pill. Now, let's get into this one. Let me just check and make sure my microphone is good. Yes, we are good. Let's go. Starting with what we discussed last week with regarding Bitcoin and the entire crypto market pumping into the May full moon, whilst Bitcoin dominance was dumping during the May full moon. Same thing that's happened this year, and so far is still playing out perfectly, regardless of today's Sunday pump. But what I also shared during last week's Red Pill is how when it comes to all the key pivot dates for Bitcoin, whether we're hitting a local top or local bottom, Bitcoin is actually doing the opposite of all of those moves that happened last year in 2024 when compared to this year here in 2025. So I'm just going to do a quick recap of that. We have over here this move into January 11th, a pump up January 11, 2024, and then this flash correction into January 23rd. And then we have over here this flash correction into January 13th, followed by a pump up into January 20th, January 21st. So it's just the exact opposite move to what happened last year, and just a couple days apart in difference. Then from the beginning of February, right here, pretty much all through the month of February, we pumped in 2024, whilst this year in 2025, from the whole month of February into the end of February, starting here on March 1st, we corrected. Then we had the March 11th through 14th top in 2024, whilst this year we've had a bottom. We crashed into March 11th. Then in 2024, we had a retest of the highs around April 8th, making another top. And then we had over here, deep correction into April 8th. So just the opposite. Now, we're in the month of May, and the extremes in the data from May 2024 was the major pump into the top of the trading range around May 21st. Now, what's so wild is we are actually doing that also, and we're just a couple days shy of May 21st. I mean, that's not following the pattern though. That's just, it's following the dates and it's also following the technicals, but it's not following that opposite pattern. So just so we could all be on the same page here, so far, if we were to just solely look at Bitcoin and no other alts, we are actually not following this pattern for May right now as we speak. And the only other thing we are following is the fact that Bitcoin was up leading into the May full moon. Only what's just occurred this weekend is kind of throwing a wrench in it, but we do have this clear manipulation. So I think we all just need to kind of be neutral right now, right? So to be fair, we still have until May 21st, which was this major move right here, May 20th into 21st. Let's just say we could even consider from the 20th to the 23rd would be very fair. So let's see how this shakes out. But as I mentioned in my last Red Pill, of course, no one should expect this pattern to work forever. And could this be the moment where the pattern stops playing out the way that we were seeing it thus far? Sure, it could be. And I believe there's a solid reason why. And that's the purpose of today's Red Pill. Because I think the reason why could very well be this event, Bitcoin Las Vegas 2025, which will be from May 27th through 29th, about 9 to 10 days away from now. So I just want to get over to this chart really quickly, and we're going to look at all the dates mapped out of past Bitcoin conferences. By the way, this is the most important Bitcoin conference, the one that has the most attendees, the one that has the, most popular key speakers. So this is the one we're referencing. And earlier today, I took a moment to map out the last 5 Bitcoin conferences going back to 2019, since the 2021 was rescheduled, I believe, due to the C19 scam that started in March 2020. And I want to quickly review with you how Bitcoin trades leading into and after this event. So for those that aren't aware, this is the biggest Bitcoin event in the world. And this year it'll have JD Vance as one of the key speakers. So the US Vice President will be attending this event. Talk about a prana harvesting ritual, eh? So in late July last year, we had Bitcoin Nashville. And let's just zoom in on the chart. By the way, what we were talking about before was us pushing up into a local top right around all-time highs in the month of May, around the May full moon. So here we are looking at Bitcoin Nashville over here. We were also up pretty much near the top. I mean, after a pretty big correction as well, similar to what we are doing right now. You can see that we actually topped during the event, and then we had one of the most elusive candles in the entire year of 2024 happening immediately after the Bitcoin conference, and that was on July 29th. This is a nasty candle because it was a fake out to the upside, which then led to an almost 30% correction only 7 days later. Very elusive candle. So that, my friends, is what we call a bull trap. Also, notice how 2 Sundays before, so we would have this Sunday right here, and then we have 1 Sunday prior, also one of those big major moves to the upside, crazy move on Monday, and then we eventually filled the CME gap that was formed a little bit later, but I mean pretty much within 1 week after that Bitcoin conference. So, just something as a side note that I wanted to include. Anyways, this is only one example, so we must investigate further. Now let's go back to 2023 for Bitcoin Miami. Yay. We have Bitcoin Miami May 19th. Well, this is interesting because in this example, we dumped into this event, but we were recovering off of a bear market, if you remember. This was when Bitcoin was 15K. Remember those days? Yeah, so we were just entering the start of our solar cycle, so the energy was quite different. But anyways, zooming in, and we want to try to see how Bitcoin was behaving around this event, and we did actually correct after it as well, pretty much immediately after. Although not nearly as significant of a correction, believe only about 8 to 9% or so. And by the way, that correction was into the June full moon, which could be very important to consider. Here we have the month of June, lots of craziness going around that full moon. So just keep that in mind. Also, Bitcoin topped on the May new moon, kind of getting similar energetics to what we're seeing today. And then we experienced that correction into the June full moon, which could become a pattern later. Then we have Bitcoin Miami 2022. We see that we did pump into this event as well. When I zoom in, we topped right before it, and then we corrected after, and then continued our bear market. So a clear correction after Bitcoin Miami in 2022. Then we have Bitcoin Miami in 2021. Interestingly enough, it was right after the major correction that we had at the start of our lunar cycle, which we're currently in. And you can see Bitcoin Miami was also on this local top, so we pushed up into the event and then immediately followed with a correction, and this is pretty big. I mean, 22%. So also you see the deepest part of the correction went to where? The June full moon. Just keep that in mind, because you see how we pumped into the May full moon. I know it doesn't look like much, guys, but after this crash, if you would have caught the bottom and sold that top, that'd be a 31% correction. That's effectively what Bitcoin's just done off of this 47K move to where we are today. I mean, whatever, 40%, 30%, it's really not that I mean, this was a much deeper correction. This was much nastier, but we had a full-blown alt season before this. So I'm just saying that this move up into the May full moon in the midst of a corrective crashing structure is pretty interesting to just keep that in mind, and then see how after this crash into this time frame, topping into the event, followed by a correction and a little bit of sideways chop, with the deepest part of the correction being the June full moon. That could very well be our pattern here. And then we have for our last example, just quickly, the Bitcoin conference in San Francisco in 2019. And this is obvious. We had a clear rally into this event, and that event marked the top because it was these days that the event was happening. And this is pretty nasty. This is about a 30% correction. So this was also quite similar to the move that happened last year after Bitcoin Nashville. Interestingly enough, if we look at the 2021 example over here and the 2023 and last year, the pullback that followed with that exoteric event of the Bitcoin conference was the lowest we went for the remainder of the cycle. So I just want to show you really quickly what I mean by that. So we have Bitcoin Nashville dumped, absolute lows, and then we continued our cycle. Here, Bitcoin Miami 2023, dump, the lowest we went. Yes, we kind of had this double bottom vibe, but still went higher. Here was a bear market, we know that, but this example too. So we have the Bitcoin Miami event. The dump that comes after was technically our lows, and a similar vibe to the way that it went down in this example here, where we have a low followed by another last test before pushing higher, low, test, push higher, low, one more test, push higher. I mean, what's going on, guys? Is this it? Is this what they're going to do? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure, because we're working with a market right now that is in extremes. And I'm not just talking Bitcoin. I'm talking about everything. We have gold at all-time highs. We have everything that's happening with M2. We have what the Fed just came out and said a couple of days ago, which I believe wasn't as bullish as some people might think. So June is a wild card in this particular market environment, in my opinion. It's one of those, it could go both ways. It could be a pump dump kind of vibe. And the setup that we have right now into that month is dangerous. And we'll get to that a little bit later. And by the way, some people might think like, Waters, are you bearish? No, I am not bearish until we get to the September lunar eclipse. Until then, we have a lot that can go down. Was this pump up that we've had healthy? No, but that's crypto. It's never really healthy in these lands. So anyways, let's get back to this. We do have a clear pattern, which is seeming that we top around the exoteric event of this Bitcoin conference, followed by a pullback. And in this example, it took about 11 days. In 2023, it took about it took actually about 4 weeks, technically. Yeah. So it took about 4 weeks. And then 2021 over here, it took about 3 weeks after the event. And we did push up higher, although we did have immediately following it a large correction. I mean, imagine we immediately got a 20% correction now. That'd be brutal. So when we take from this date to this low over here around the June full moon, it was about 18 days. Let's call it 3 weeks. So we have around 3 to 4 weeks after is when Bitcoin was bottoming. In this example, it was just a major liquidity event, right? So of course, this doesn't give us anything specific to work with, but considering Bitcoin corrected into the June full moon for the last 4 years straight, after topping on the May new moon for all of those years, that could give us something to consider, since the full moon that's coming up in June will be on June 11th. And that's a little over 2 weeks from the Bitcoin Las Vegas conference this year, and nearly the same amount of days when comparing the 2021 example, which was also at the same timing of where we are with our lunar cycle. So there's something energetic that's similar, right? But since we're bringing in the element of the moon phases, I do have to bring up how in both 2019 and 2021, this example over here, and over here, or sorry, 2020, I meant to say, we have this kind of like we are bottoming around 11 days or so before the June full moon. And I know this is a little crazy to talk about, but I do want to bring this up because I feel it could be helpful, especially when we talk about 2020, because of how similar this V-shaped recovery has been for the traditional markets, right? So we can't discount that information. So we have the June full moon right over here, and we have about 11 days before we are bottoming, and that was the lowest we went, by the way. Also, we were topping right there around the May new moon before that correction. And then we just were continuing higher and higher, but this was pretty boring time after a very exciting crash recovery. Let me just check my microphone real quick, make sure we're good. Yes, we are. Okay, so just consider 11 days before that. And then over here, we have the June full moon. And if you look, boom, right around the same time. So the absolute low to the downside was around 11 days before, about 8 days before too. So why this is valuable is because it gives us something to work with where we can consider all scenarios. And also, I think things are going to move much faster this time around because of the energetics of our next lunar eclipse. So that's just taking my overall investment thesis and my overall thesis in general about how I see this playing out. And it's giving you that, those nuances, those insights. Again, that's what you come here for with these red pills. You want something different. And it's not just about taking an exoteric event and mapping out, this is information that you guys could find out on your own. But what is more special and hidden within what's going on here is the gematria, numerology, and astrology. And by the way, today, May 18th, and now that I brought this up, it's the 138th day of the year. 138 is tied back to Donald Trump by the code. It's a very powerful number, and there's plenty of other things to say about these connections, but I didn't want to take up too much of our time today with that sort of decoding. I just wanted to give you guys the value because of this crazy pump that we're getting right now, and stick to what matters most. So, we talked about the 11 days before thing that happened in 2020 and 2019. And if we were to take 11 days before this upcoming full moon, that would be June 1st. It would either, if you wanted to consider it June 1st, or if you wanted to consider it the last day of May, whatever. It's pretty much like 3 days before the start of this Bitcoin conference. Or sorry, 3 days after the start of the Bitcoin conference that's coming up. So it's also right after the May new moon. So are we going to have a similar thing that happened last year with Bitcoin Nashville, when right after the new moon, you see that blue dot, we just cascaded to the downside? Or what happened on May moving into June of 2024? We have the new moon and then we dumped after that too. So we were up on the May full moon, and then the following new moon we corrected. And remember last year, these full moon, new moon, everything that was going on was actually pretty interesting, how we got our first two tops and then that third top on June. But then we had all of these major corrections after a new moon. It was a little bit what I was anticipating for this upcoming new moon, but it didn't happen. And it was a miscalculation that I had because I was noticing the May full moon is really one of the most bullish full moons we get. Otherwise, we have also November, but that's another part of the conversation because November's too many months away for us to care about that right now. So could we have something similar to what happened after Bitcoin Nashville, where we do pump higher and we maybe even make a new all-time high? Like, that would be the ultimate trap, right? Considering how it's turned out after that event every time. So will Bitcoin have this really quick, sharp pullback? Well, that would be more in alignment with the most bullish case scenario. And also what would be more in alignment with what happened back in the 2019 or the 2020 example. And specifically the 2020 example would be not too much of a correction. I mean, we're talking from this local top to right here about 12%. And that's kind of what I'm looking for now. Like, I've been very vocal about this over the past probably 3 red pills, that I'm not anticipating Bitcoin to go below 88K. That would be crazy. 89K would be a gift from the gods. And at this point, I think 94 to 95 would be incredible. would be incredible. And I'm not calling for it. We're in extremes right now, guys. So this is coin toss type stuff. The energetics are up until August new moon. You've known that for a long time here. We're getting very fancy right now, trying to, the play by play in the between. So you all know this. So if we considered the scenario before where we would have, around a 2-week time frame after the event, it would put us into around June 7th or so. And then we know that would be about a couple of days before the full moon. That would be in our 5-day window. And it does align with our theory about how there could be that kind of pullback vibe. And then we also have that June FOMC meeting to follow. So it would be really interesting to look into what's going on with M2, what's going on with just the money in general, and how Bitcoin was able to be pushed up so high into this particular weekend out of all weekends. And now we're heading into this really popular event, which was a trap last year and the year before and the year, clearly over here, because imagine you had this rally up into the event and you thought, oh man, maybe there's not going to be a bear market. Nope. And here, clear trap, because this would have been something where we already had the crazy correction. Now Bitcoin's going to get a bunch of attention. Everyone cares now. Send it to the moon. And no, it was a very arduous pullback, and it lasted another 50 days. This was all because of the energetics of the market. Had nothing to do with the event itself. They're scheduling the event date to happen on those days for that energy. That's the way this actually works. It's the same thing with everything else that's happened in this market over the past couple of years. And when you look at the solar and lunar cycles, then we're talking even longer examples. Examples going back to 2013 with Bitcoin, which is stuff that I teach in my crypto decoding blueprint. But getting back on track here, we do have a lot that points to a potential last shakeout to the downside before real deal price discovery expansion. I know that's hard to talk about right now when we're looking at these markets. We're looking at Bitcoin pushing up from 100K to 107. Then now in the same day while I'm filming, it's 105. Like, these are crazy swings, guys. I get it. But we have to pay attention to this data in these final moments. It's more important now than everything. Of course, if your bags are packed, you're chilling, you're enjoying the ride. But a lot of people right now are feeling these, emotions kick in, and it's making it very tough to navigate. So hopefully here at Waters Above, you're chill and you're vibing and you're enjoying this calm that you get here amongst the chaos. So again, to wrap up this analysis, we have the past 5 Bitcoin conferences followed with a correction. But what is also true is that Bitcoin has pumped into several of them as well. And here we are. It is May 18th on the chart. It's May 19th. We're about 9 to 10 days out from this Bitcoin conference. And that conference happens to be the day after our upcoming new moon. So it will be in a new moon energy. And by the way, we've been known to be up into the May new moon. So just so you're aware, even last year when we had the May full moon top, we were holding up into the new moon as well. So let me show you what I mean by that. It's right over here. We pumped into the May full moon, chopped a little bit, had one more move up into the following new moon, and then we had a correction into June full moon, which we talked about earlier. Something to keep in mind. So keep in mind that immediately following the May new moon last year, Bitcoin had about an 8% correction. And in 2023, the Bitcoin Miami conference, Bitcoin also was on a new moon at that time. We had about a 5% correction right here following it, a little bit of a fake out pump to the upside, and then right here into the total correction on June 14th. The total move from the conference to the lows was about a 9% correction. Nothing crazy. In 2022, we also pumped into that, and then it followed by an immediate 9% correction before plunging deeper into the bear market in 2021. So you're seeing a theme here, right? And then in 2021, we had a major move up and just like a flash crash. Crazy volatility for all of this. I mean, look at this recovery for Bitcoin. This was a 300% move for Bitcoin. Like, and then we topped on the Bitcoin conference date. It's fucked up. Chopped, and then the C19 crashed to reset everything. So just wanted you to know that this concept of a potentially 7 or 8% correction on the lower side is not weird, and very much could even happen into May 21st, which is this upcoming Wednesday. And what did I just tell you earlier? When we had the really big Sunday pumps like we had over here on March 23rd, we made it up into about Tuesday, and then Wednesday we started to roll over. Here in December, we had the same thing, topping on a Tuesday, rolled over on the Wednesday. Did give you one more. Oh yeah, over here too. We had the pump and dump in general, and then over here, an even deeper correction into the next full moon. So I don't know if it's going to be this crazy. I don't think we're going to have a 20% or 30% correction. That is weird if that was to occur. But at this time, if we were to mark where we just moved up to, which is like what, 107K Bitcoin, and if that were to be the top, which again, it's very hard to determine at these times when we have this level of volatility, but a move down for Bitcoin to fill that lower CME gap around 92K would be a 14% correction. And if we were to have Bitcoin dominance go up again to like 64, 65% during that move, lights out for altcoins. They would all push down at least 15 to 20% more, which would be great. Who cares? It would be awesome. I'm very neutral to all of this right now. We are in the final moments. You must be neutral too. We'll talk a little bit about the investment thesis in a moment. But getting back to this, we still did push up into the May new moon before the correction in the last examples. So I just want you to be cautious. And in 2020, after this C19 crash, which was over here, we have the May new moon. We were topping, came back down immediately following it. What was this, 9%? Okay, 12%. That would be like, imagine we have the Bitcoin conference and we corrected 12% over like 5 days. Where would that put us right now? 12% from our local top. Boom, right there. That would be into that area that we were just chopping around before liftoff. That would be a very clean correction to have. I mean, under 89K, that would look pretty disturbing, especially with how high we've pumped. But hey, man, last year we did this same shit. We topped twice and then had a major correction, came back up to the top, another major correction. I mean, this chop was silly. These were crazy moves. So what just happened is not unheard of for Bitcoin. It's not unheard of. Now, we do want to consider that, right? The placement of the May full moon in 2019, by the way. Let's get back to that. Looks almost like the same example that I was telling you a moment ago, right? We have the May full moon pumping into the May full moon, lots of volatility, pushing up into the following new moon, and then we had a correction off of that new moon, about 15%, before rallying one more time higher into late June. I mean, this would be very similar, I think, to the timing of the dates and everything that we're dealing with here today. Also, 2017 was the same story, I believe. Let me go back to show you this. So we have, yep, we're looking at May. We moved up into the May new moon and then immediate correction, 33%. Also, look at the date that this happened on, May 27th. So that aligns very closely to the dates that we have for this upcoming Bitcoin conference. It's literally the day. That would be wacky if it just happened pretty much how it did in the last Bitcoin Nashville, where we were met by a very sharp correction. So this style of flash correction is something we must be prepared for due to how quickly the traditional markets have been pumping recently after the tariff crash. It's something that I've been focusing on a lot lately in my midweek updates I've been sending out. And since I brought up the traditional markets and you're now all aware of the energetics tied to the upcoming new moon on May 26th through the next full moon on June 11th, tied to today's Bitcoin Las Vegas conference Decoded, I now want to take a moment to review the charts of the major indices to see where we're at in this relief rally, which has turned out to be a very rare V-shaped recovery. So we're going to open up the NASDAQ. Also hope you guys are having an amazing weekend. Crazy energies over the past month. And I know some people have been reaching out to me and just telling me how they've been feeling all sorts of craziness, all sorts of chaos. And hey, man, I mean, that's what we're working with. It's like similar to 2020, right? In May of 2020, after we had the C19 crash and we had the lockdowns and we had all of this madness, when we got over to the month of May and we were in a lockdown in the summertime, it was just weird, right? Like very weird to feel like no sense of freedom at all. But meanwhile, markets were recovering, businesses were being shut down, right? Bitcoin's rallying back up, like fully recovered. Anybody who was into markets back then knows that. I mean, very strange how one energy is being taken from one thing and it's being sent into the other thing. It's just balance. I would say May is all about the balance. So we're looking at the NASDAQ. You can see that we're actually, when I pull up this fib, we're about to kiss this 888 fib level around 21,500 points. This will be a almost 30% recovery since we crashed into April 7th, an absolutely mind-blowing recovery. And when we pull the same exact fib back in 2020 during the C19 crash, you will see over here how this all went. We made it to the 888 fib, which I know might be a little hard to see. I could extend it out over here for you guys. So that would be right around here, which was in May, by the way, just so you know. It was in May. And this is wild, man. This is crazy. I feel like simulation confirmed, right, guys? Like 100% simulation confirmed. But what's cool about this is when we made it up to the 888 fib, we actually did have a correction of about 5%. And what's funny? This was a gap fill from the gap that formed around the May full moon. Also, another thing to keep in mind is that after we had about a 30% recovery for the NASDAQ, which would be right about here, you can see that gap over there. We did have a gap fill as well. If you were looking at this based on percentages, which is not sophisticated and not something I'm like leaning on to prove a point or anything, I'm just bringing it up. But we did have that gap fill, and that was a very major gap fill, which is similar to the one that we have now. So let's just come back to today's charts and let me show you what we're working with, because you saw how that was about a 6% correction. Well, if we were to take from where we are now to fill up this gap over here that formed at the May full moon, it would be about a 6% correction. So are we going to have a similar correction? I mean, it would be sensible at this time for us to have a little pullback. Otherwise, what is this? Like, what are we doing right now? This is unbelievable for this buyback. I'm impressed. Waters is impressed. This is madness. I'm enjoying this, guys. This is like Clown World 3.0. Gotta love it. So if we did push to this 21,500 point level at the 888 fib, and then we corrected down to fill this gap slightly below the 702 fib, it would be about a 6% correction. And if this were to play out, it would be scary, similar to the way the C19 crash fractal played out. And so far, it is mimicking that fractal closest to any other example. And this could very well play out because we now have the daily RSI for the NASDAQ seated above 70 into overbought territory. And also, one thing that I think is cool to bring up is let's go back to the C19 crash and look at when we first got into overbought territory. It was right here at this peak in early June. And we did have also a 6% correction in that example too. So we had multiple 5 to 6% corrections along the way up during this recovery. And so far for the NASDAQ, it's like we only had one correction and it was right after the crash happened. We've just been straight line breaking out since. So this is insanely unhealthy. And the speed of which we went from oversold to overbought is even faster than the 2020 example. So this is much more manipulation, right? So where would a 6% correction be for Bitcoin? Well, it depends on where we're measuring it, because it would have to also be in alignment with when the NASDAQ opens. So let's just say, for sake of what we're watching right now, which is crazy, we were to have a 6% correction for Bitcoin, it would bring us to around 98K, which has been an incredibly important level. You see this white line that's going across the screen at 98K. It's been a very important level since we broke into the 100K territory back at the end of last year. Now, of course, keep in mind, let me just check my audio real quick. We're good. Keep in mind that if the NASDAQ were to correct around 5%, Bitcoin will usually do at least double that move, usually. So we could consider that a 5% correction for the NASDAQ could be around a 10% correction for Bitcoin. And off of the local highs we just had, a 10% correction would put us to around 96K. And if Bitcoin dominance was to stay up during that move, then alts will get hit even harder, naturally. You all know this. Not calling for that to happen, but just consider this, guys. Unless Bitcoin, for whatever reason, flash crashes into before the daily open or the weekly open for the NASDAQ, which that would be so messed up. Now that they've pushed Bitcoin to 107, trapped a bunch of people, and then sink it below 100, that would be... I don't think that's going to happen. That's too much. It's too much. Let's quickly check in with Total 3. Hope you guys are having as much fun as me here in this crazy world we live in. So Total 3, we were tracking the fractal before. We know the older fractal did not work out, so we pushed it up a little bit more. It's not to push the goalpost. That's not what we're doing here. We've never relied on fractals. We were just seeing that the fractal was holding pretty nicely. And since we've backtested this major, so we're looking at this white trend line support, since we've had that last backtest here on May 6th, that has been a major impulse to the upside. And question is, will we get another backtest on this white trend line one more time before we go up higher? Well, that was the case back in our last time doing this move, from the top to the bottom of the channel. Here from the top to the bottom of the channel, we did have multiple tests before really moving up much higher. And that also had to do with the way Bitcoin dominance was behaving. So we took the same fractal and have placed it over here. And we did get a move that went up a little bit higher past the second line in our channel. And then it came back to backtest around this 786 fib on the macro. So we have a major fib pull from the total swing high to the swing low, from 2021 peak in November to the 2022 December lows. And you can see, like, we're back testing the top of the golden pocket after we've hit a double top and have back tested the 702. This is really primed, guys, for launch. Like, I'm telling you, don't wait any longer. If you don't have exposure to these markets, do not fuck around waiting for some magical correction don't do that. It's just, we're too late. This is too late, okay? Even if we were to get a pullback into June, I mean, you do need to consider that this chop could just be sideways between this level that we're in now. It might not go much lower, all right? Look at what this fractal shows us. If we were to just sink and have a flash correction right now for Bitcoin, it might only go to about 800 billion on this Total 3 chart. You see my point? Okay. So consider that if we were to look to around June 12th, which would be the full moon in June, that's around 825 billion. This gives us a range to keep in mind, and it's a tight range. It's only about 5% away or so from where we're at currently. That's 6%. 6% on the nose, right? And what did I say earlier about Bitcoin? If we are to have a 5% correction in the NASDAQ, we should at least correct 5% for Bitcoin from the current levels. And with Bitcoin dominance this high, you do need to watch out for those sorts of moves. And it could be like flash crash vibes. Now, crash is the wrong word. It could be a flash correction style vibe where it's 48 hours of red and then we just go straight up, just straight up. That's it. So I want you to kind of keep that idea in mind. Get in the market. Don't wait. Not financial advice. So this shows we'd reached the top of this parallel channel after touching the bottom of it right around July 22nd, July 23rd, which is right there into our July new moon, right around 1.7 trillion. And guys, we're looking at, let's call it 800 billion, total 3, up to the top of this channel is 104% move. Now, if we were to take from 825 billion to the top of this channel, it's 100% move. And if we were to move from right here to the top of this channel, it's an 87% move. This is not worth waiting for a deeper correction to get some perfect entry. Also, this is likely to break the top of this channel and head into this 1618 fib, which is what the alt season is really like. So now what we're saying is from where we're at currently to this top, it's a 200% move. You can't do that in the stock market. You might be able to do that here in crypto in just a couple months. And we know that if we were to see that type of move, all the individual assets should typically go much higher. So this is really kind of, this data is unfortunately being held down by things like Solana and BNB, which will do well. But if you were to go to like others, for instance, you get a different picture of the percentage moves. Anyways, let's now kind of just wrap up this idea. We're about 45 minutes into our podcast today. I did want to just show you how this could have that last minute kind of chop before the true release. Although, yeah, the fact that we're backtesting what could be this inverse head and shoulders pattern, we have the left shoulder, head, right shoulder, and we did pretty much backtest the March 26th top. I mean, technically the push down to like 840 billion would be cleaner. That could be the play, guys. So, yep, we're in the final moments. I'm going to put more and more emphasis on that as we go. So if we look back at our last cycle, you'll see that the energy from the July full moon, let me pull that up. Where are we at? Where are we at? Apologies. So you see right here from this time frame of the November new moon over to this top, it was about 30 days going from the bottom of the channel all the way to the top. That could actually be very similar to how it plays out this time around too. And if you look from this pivot right over here to this top, it was about 50 days. So we can work in a very tight time frame and go from more on the lower end up to extreme highs just with tiny little tweaks in Bitcoin dominance. I want to get over to others and then wrap up this analysis so that we can focus on these charts, get out of the more experimental technical analysis. So we're looking at others right now. And we could very well be playing out this same pattern that we had over here, where you see I marked in orange when we had from swing high to swing low coming up into the 0.5 fib for the first time. Just check my audio. And when we hit that level, we did correct, and we actually chopped a little bit before having one more move below the 382 fib, and then we launched. So if we zoom in, you could actually see, if I was to delete this fractal, look at what's going on. We made it up to the 0.5 fib, which is right here, and then we've corrected. And perhaps we do have this trend line that I have, and we were supported by that trend line for a little bit of time before having one shakeout to the downside, clear bear trap, and then that bear trap was a straight line breakout. And you can see, went up about 130 some odd percent in 33 days. Now, That move is really fascinating because it could be playing out again in the timing of our overall cycle. Now, what would be the most amazing thing to happen is if we look at others from the last cycle where we have the swing high to swing low fib, we did hit the 1618. And if we were to have that move this time around where we had a full-blown alt season, let me just show you where that 1618 would be this time around. I'm going to make sure that this setting is turned on. It is. Make sure that's turned on, and we have the 1618 for this cycle sitting at 162, 163, or sorry, 1.62 trillion. Let's call it 1.6 trillion to be simple. And from where we are now today to 1.6 trill is 500%. Okay? So I wouldn't mess around with this market right now, again, waiting for more and more lower targets on entries. Because pretty much everything is a buy while we're looking at Bitcoin near all-time highs and we're looking at Bitcoin dominance starting to zigzag all over the place. I just want to make sure that you guys aren't sidelined during this whole move, right? Remember, I am in a much different position than many people. I've accumulated all throughout 2023. And a lot of 2024. I've bought most of my Bitcoin when it was below 30K. I had all of my Bitcoin accumulated this cycle at 20K. I had all of my Bitcoin from the last cycle accumulated under 10K. I don't need to position myself in this market right now, but that might not be the case for you. So if you need exposure to this market, you must take this seriously, right? So consider this pattern, consider this chop, and the fact that where this chop would lead us to on the lows is right around the June full moon. I'm not saying that this is the way it's going to go. And by the way, this is only a couple of days, guys. This is only a couple of days of what went down here with this V shape, followed by launching much, much higher. So just want you to take this seriously. So keep this in mind. If we were to measure from where we are now down to this low, it's only 9-10%. Okay, it's not something to wait for. And as I've said many times in so many of my updates recently, if you have no exposure to these markets, then you need to consider implementing a dollar cost averaging strategy soon. Not financial advice, of course, but with Bitcoin nearing all-time highs and on its way into price discovery, you need to consider how many top projects, such as Doge, for instance, that are about 200% away from all-time highs. Just look at this. 224% away from all-time highs. Let's look at Aave. I bet Aave is 200%. Killer project. 194% away, guys. Let's go to XLM. I know this is an opportunity right now. A lot of people sleep on this because they're only looking at XRP. But we're about to go into alt season. 108% to the alt season last time, but what about the all-time high? 220%. 220%. XRP is only about 30% away from all-time highs right now, guys. So you just got to ask yourself, there's nothing wrong with having XRP. It's just with XRP, you needed to go a lot higher to just get even close to this move that we're able to get by back testing the prior all-time high for XLM. This isn't me saying that XLM is a better investment. That's not my point. But a 200% move for XRP from here is putting you around $7, which is kind of my next big impulse target personally, is around 8. And I've been talking about that for years, okay? So with that being said, you would need price discovery to buy in today on XRP to get that move, but XLM, you would have that move just by getting back to prior all-time highs. Now ask yourself, if we were to have a real deal alt season where we see a major collapse in Bitcoin dominance, you can see double-digit XRP. What do you think you're going to see with XLM? So I'm just saying that to let you know there's plenty of opportunity left in this market. Please pay attention to this. Bitcoin dominance is around 64% right now. And last cycle, when we broke below 60%, over here, right at this moment where we were, let me show you, take all this off, put on the 3-day, crazy market moves right now. So right when we made it to around here and you saw this chop, when we broke below 60% concretely, that was when we saw crazy moves in the alts. Same with the end of 2020 or 2017, excuse me. You could see right here where the dotted line is across the screen. We had this major move up to 70% and then just collapsed. Okay. So far, we actually haven't even hit 66%. So it'll be interesting to see how the market maker plays this final move of this cycle before Bitcoin dominance starts to reverse trend, which a lot of people thought that it would just start happening right now. But we did kind of see the same move last year for Bitcoin in May, June of 2024. And we went over this. And let me just show you really quickly before we move over to the charts. I'm going to put on the moon cycles. And we had right over here the May full moon, major correction in Bitcoin dominance, bottoming around that full moon, and then we impulsed up into the next new moon. That's what it looks like we're doing right now. So I'm not sure if the Bitcoin trend is over yet. We might still have another month or so until we reverse trend. So now with that being said, let's get into these charts and analyze the setup for the new week, which unfortunately, guys, I got to admit, it's not easy to do TA when you have a Sunday pump like that. It's just crazy. And remember, look at that 1 hour chart. Like, what the hell is this? What is this? Right? It's funny. This is gnarly, man. Like, doing TA on this market is like fucking ice skating in outer space, in fake space. Okay. But seriously, let's get over to some of these moving averages. Okay, so we have the 13 EMA. Just monster moves on these moving averages, sloping to the upside, everything in bullish posture. Let's look at where the 200s are. Okay, so we have the 55 now about to cross above this 200 EMA, or sorry, SMA very soon, and that type of move is like the crazy part of the rally. So you see over here, we have the 55, which is the white moving average. I'm going to turn off the EMAs so you can see this a little cleaner. Or actually, let me do this to help you guys even more. We're going to turn off the 8 symbol. We're going to turn off the 200 exponential, and we're just looking at 2 moving averages right now. Super clean for you guys. Okay. So you see when the 55 crosses below the 200, that was marking a bottom, which is like fucking analysis that I know about, but it's so hard to remember all these things. There's a million things to talk about. But that right there was something that also happened this year. We have the 55 crossing below the 200, that marked the bottom. Then what we have is when this 55 crosses back above the 200, which so far looks like it's going to be happening a lot sooner. When that happens, we have the final impulse. There's a couple more examples of this that we can entertain over here. You see cross below, the 55 crosses below the 200, it marks a bottom. We crossed above, send it. Over here, same bullshit happened during the lunar cycle in 2021. We have when this crosses below, it marks a bottom. I want you guys to write this down. You could write this down. So in 3 years or whatever, when this shit happens again, you go, Waters, you taught me this. Remember? And then I go, thank you. This is how we help each other. This is how we help each other. So you see this indicator is crazy. Mark the bottom. Then when we crossed above, that was our top. That's what followed into the final phase. So it's like this relationship between the crosses. Okay. I think it's huge. It's very huge. And it's not going to be perfect because these are lagging indicators, but still this cross right here, I mean, you would have gotten Bitcoin at fucking $5,000. Like no complaints, right? When you could get in at 5K before it goes to almost 70. It's not bad, right? Here, you would have been able to get into Bitcoin at 29 before it went to almost 70. Here, you would have been able to get into Bitcoin at 25. You would have been able to get in Bitcoin at 25K before it went to 100K. That's pretty gnarly. So we just had this cross. That's pretty much all the analysis we need right now. Because we know once this crosses back above, that's pretty much when we should be pushing up into the price discovery times, and it could happen even sooner. Of course, it's a lagging indicator, as I said moments ago, but yeah, this is just kind of the final moments. It's like the weekly. Like I said, we just had the highest daily close ever. So that would be the highest weekly close ever. Yep. So guys, Bitcoin is in price discovery right now, technically on the macro. Unbelievable. Another indicator is just this back test of the 55 simple, which we did swipe through, and it happened here too in the last cycle. When we topped in April, we came back down to July lows, kissed the 55 simple, and then went up one last time. And you know it's the end of the bull run when we break below the 55 simple, and then we have resistance on it. So far, we've been holding it. So you'll know when Bitcoin's bear market is in concretely when we close a weekly candle below the 55. And this is going up very slowly. So, I mean, it would make more sense for Bitcoin to have more impulses up before that. So as I said, I'm bullish until September lunar eclipse. And then, you know what's fucked up? With the way that this snake year is going, perhaps we go to September, we have a 30% correction, hit the 55 simple again, and then we go up again. Why not? You know, like this would not shock me because we have the shortest lunar cycle ever in this current cycle, where you can see September lunar eclipse. And then if I was to show you what 2026's lunar eclipse is, it should be March. And then we have solar eclipses, full solar eclipses. So we only have till March as our last total lunar eclipse. And then technically the cycle starting again about a year from now in August. So we could have the shortest bear market, even shorter than here. This one. But by the way, with the gift of a short bear market came the gift of a flash crash / global lockdown. So be careful what you wish for, right? As investors, it's great, right? Because there's blood in the streets, it gives you chances, but it always has to come with a package deal of what else is going on in the energetics on the world stage. So weeklies, like you can't comment on the weekly. We're just getting crazy Sunday, Monday volatility. As I said, we need to consider the move for the 21st of May because of what happened last year with the push to the top on May 20th, May 21st. This time around, we could, for instance, get a little flash down to like 100K, maybe get bought back up, send up until the event with this Bitcoin conference, and then keel over after that for, you know, maybe only 8, 9, 10% correction. Nothing crazy, nothing catastrophic, right? Just another day in the matrix. And I'll keep you guys updated with the weekly updates. Now we have Ethereum. Ethereum actually has been playing on our analysis perfectly because we came up to the 200 simple, got rejected, but also it was the fastest move we had from oversold to overbought on the RSI ever, going from what, 24 to like 85. That's too much. So getting the correction now is not weird. Should not shock anyone. Also, last year, we topped on the May full moon. So we have over here, we have this move up on the May full moon with the largest daily candle we've had since. Just like here, we have this crazy candle that pushed us into this time frame. And then it was after the new moon of June, we corrected down to the 55 simple. I don't think we'll go that far. That's a little too much for this final moments kind of stuff. But yep, we're just playing on the energetics right now. So ETH is okay. I just don't like how quickly we moved up. Also, and shout out to another War Machine, I think it is. Yeah, another community legend we have. Also, shout out to Squeaky Doorknob for keeping everything Schizo Vibes 101. You prove that we still have free speech in waters above. I'm just kidding. Shout out to everyone, bro. Shout out to everyone. Shout out to our whole community. You guys are legends. But yeah, another War Machine brought up this major trend line, and yep, it's something we were tracking for a long time. You guys remember this blue trend line, and you can see we came down to the bottom of it in our bear market. Then we just snaked around it a bunch of times until a major impulse up, which kind of had this awkward triple top in the local structure. And then we broke below it into the start of our lunar cycle, right? Well, we've made it right back up. and then we've got rejected on it. So that's not the nicest thing to see, but we do have this fib pull showing us that it aligned with the bottom of the golden pocket. So that's normal to pump straight from, what was this, a 60% correction? Yeah, this was a 66% correction, and then we came straight up V-shaped recovery pretty much to the golden pocket. That's not healthy. So we're back at the 0.5, and I do have to admit, guys, you see this red trend line across the screen? I'm going to just pump it up a little bit, just a little, and you could see it's fair. It would be the breakdown into our bear market, the first major impulse to the upside before during a bear market. Then when we had the back test over here after breaking above it, we went up. That's very technical. Then we came down to it a couple times before attempting to push higher, but it couldn't happen. And then also, I think this March 25th rejection is another sign of how important this horizontal level is around the 382. So do we get ETH at the 382 at this local 382 fib? Let's check one more thing before we confirm that with you guys. And we're going to do a macro fib pull. And we're going to see, oof, that's right at the 0.5 fib. I like that. I like it. Let's go over here. Did we get anything similar? Oh, would you look at that? Right here. V-shape recovery, macro 618 rejection, backtest on the 0.5, and then we go to Valhalla. Is that the play? Perhaps. So that's a violent move, though, to come all the way back down to 2065. That would be, let me just show you really quick from where we are now. That would be okay, no, that's not weird. That would only be a 13% correction for ETH, which Bitcoin could have a 6% correction and make that happen. So guys, mark your charts for around 2,100 ETH. I am not saying it will happen, but that gives you a level to consider because we swiped through all of that liquidity in a very unhealthy pump. Now, XRP is holding this trend this channel very, very nicely. I mean, obviously we have an extreme to the downside, extreme to the upside. For the most part, though, this parallel channel that's rising has been playing, which by the way is like a bear flag. I don't like that, but whatever. Patterns don't matter at this point. This is pretty clean. We've been rejected off the top of this several times, even quite recently, and then we've not actually backtested the lower side of the range. Although if we wanted, apologies, let me see if I could adjust this a little bit. I mean, if you wanted to do that, then sure, but I don't. Obviously 227, 228 is very possible for XRP because it's only like a 4% correction rate. Like we pretty much hit 230, 2 days ago. So what does that matter, right? That could easily happen. If Bitcoin had a 2% correction from here, we could see this bottom on the trend line. And this parallel channel is very experimental. It doesn't necessarily need to hold, but it is something I'm keeping in mind. Also, if I was to put on an area chart on the daily, let's see where this puts us. Ooh, so that would have been clean backtest right there. So you see top rejection, one more rejection, if I get it a little closer. And then here would have been your backtest. It's not the cleanest in the world, but if I was to turn on candles, yep, perfect. So yeah, 210 was probably the best entry. That will be for the rest of this whole move, unless we were talking flash corrections. Like anything flash style vibes can punch us through lower liquidity in a 4-hour candle, and then we could be bought back up. So at this time, I mean, sub $2 XRP is tough to to consider. I think anything that we're at right now, though, is splitting hairs. It's good enough wherever we're at now. We were just at 265, so you can take it as as I film this, are down almost 10% from the local highs. Consider that you're in a better entry than somebody who bought the top at 3, right? And just keep it moving from there. Now let's get over to Hash AI. We are looking at this project for the first time. So one thing to mention is we don't have a full year of chart history on this one, but I do kind of want to do at least one new altcoin every week moving forward. I don't want to keep reviewing old projects. So to just keep things fresh and fun, let's look at this project. Now, we have it launching around like me mark the level so we could have a quick TA lesson if we were to be looking at a brand new spanking fresh chart. All right. So we have the launch level. We have about a week of price discovery extremes. So we have this level and that level. We're marking that all off. And now you can see that we have a little bit of data to work with horizontally. We're going to pull this fib. And we got two things that just occurred. One, from this swing high to swing low, we've come up straight into the golden pocket and have gotten rejected since, in alignment with this launch, the level that we launched at, which is going to be significant in general. Although, if you bought the lows on this from the November, by the way, this thing was sinking into November, and then just from the election, it went up in a straight line for, that's fucking crazy. So from the election, like if you bought the election on this and then sold a week, a month later, it'd be 800% play. But I just with my eyes am going to assume this is a 90% correction. Oh my God, I'm right. Ooh, 93%. Ugh. Basura, as my grandmother would say. Yeah, this is no bueno. 93% correction recently. Like we're talking from the top of December to this low on April 8th. So it lost everything. It's still technically in price discovery to the downside, and it has under a year of chart history, so it's not fair to like judge this. But yeah, this type of chop and volatility is pretty rough. And there's no definitive clear horizontal trading range at this time because we've had a move higher followed by a lower low. It's just figuring itself out. It's like a teenager, I guess. Now, not able to get to the 702 fib is a sign. And since we've had a 43% correction and we backtested the 0.5 fib. Okay, so what was I teaching you before on Ethereum? Well, it's quite common when you get up to the golden pocket to backtest the 382. And since you swipe through all of that liquidity in just a couple daily candles, I do suspect that a Bitcoin is to correct at all, even to 100K. We could see this correct also down to backtesting around these levels. And then you have to ask yourself, well, if you did want to play the venture capital game, you have about a 450% move, or maybe price discovery sends you to a penny. So if we were to just take from where we are now to hitting 1 penny on hash AI, that's a 1,500% move. That is great. That is very normal. If this is available to you on an easy to buy and sell exchange, such as Coinbase or whatever, go ahead and leave a comment below and let us know where you're buying this project. It could be very helpful for those that are interested in the AI sector. I myself am going to hold off on this one for now, just because I already have too much exposure to these speculative assets, and I'd rather play it a little safer. But that does not mean that if you have a couple $100 to throw at the wall, that you can't dabble and have fun. But just keep in mind that if you were to buy this today and Bitcoin were to correct to like 100K, for instance, and this was to drop another 30%, don't get mad and don't feel bad about yourself doing that, because you should be dollar cost averaging. And if you were to only put a couple $100 in this and treat it as venture capital, well, if it went to zero, you only lost a couple $100. But if it was to pump all the way to about a penny, right below that technical 1618 target, you just turn $100 into pretty nice, little payout. So that's what venture capital is all about, right? Now, I don't know if this should go much lower than the 382, only because I'm going to put one more level for you guys, and it's right here. Look to the left of the screen, and you're going to see what we're talking about. I'm going to turn this to red. All right. Now, you see this chop right here? Also chop before we went lower. That's a key level. So backtesting that, in my opinion, would be a very technical move as such. Okay. Now, let's move on to Nervous Network. It's been a minute. When was the last time I covered this? Ooh-wee. Alrighty, Mamma mia, this is chopping around too. Kind of like the ETH chart. It did not go up into a new all-time high, but it did make it to the 888 fib. Also, it's sunk all the way down to the 236, so quite a correction. Is this 85%? Oh my God, 90. Whew. I almost sounded like Trump there. Fuck. I want to get the Trump accent down, but I'm not good at impersonations. But yeah, shout out to Donald Trump. So one thing to mention about this project, and it's not to talk shit, it's just because this is the Red Pill podcast and we need to hand out those red pills. But this is the C19 crash, and this was about the recovery stage of the C19 crash. So this has not done a whole lot as an investment over these years, going back to 2020, but it's been a huge trading opportunity. Why? Well, if you bought this move in November and you quickly sold this about whatever, 144 days later, yeah, if you were to sell this after it hit about 1,000% move, you know, you would have been in a good position, because this lost what, like 90, let me get it to right there, be fair, lost 95% of its value, 94, 93% of its value. And then if you were to buy the bear market on this and you were to again practice the 10x rule or so, you got another 1,000%. Like, I mean, you could do very well on trading this shit, but hodling this is not the game. So I think one thing we're going to learn moving forward into the next cycle is there's very specific projects that you want to hodl. There's very specific projects that you want to trade. And it's actually going to be a majority of them are trading opportunities and very few are hodl coins, especially in the next cycle, guys, because it's just going to reduce more and more and more. Why? Well, I think my theory about 2021 being like the dot-com bubble crash is holding its weight. I think we can see when we have all of these speculative altcoins that are significantly lower than their alt season highs back in 2021, it's kind of the case. We only see the quote unquote blue chips are up and doing well, but even Ethereum looks like shit compared to Bitcoin at this stage 5 years later. So, or 4 years later, technically. So I think that's kind of what we're dealing with here in this new world of crypto. We're seeing XRP is back near all-time highs, but XLM is not that close to all-time highs. So is XRP one of those blue chips? Yes, in my opinion. That's why it's one of my biggest positions. I even think Doge holds up in this conversation as well, but not clearly doing as well as something like Solana. So is Solana one of the blue chips? Yes. I mean, clearly in the chart, I think it's the case. Could one of these projects be sacrificed? Sure. But I think even Ethereum, which is not looking so good, is here to stay. Anyways, looking at this project, we've got a major backtest of the 236. I think that's a gift. And if we look at from where we are now to just the 888 fib is a 500% move. And what did I tell you before about the opportunities? This is an opportunity. I wouldn't bet the farm on it, but this is an opportunity, man. Imagine this were to just be an inverse head and shoulders back test. You'd be so fucking mad if this thing went up to, you know, a new, just retest the all-time high at 750%. So where are you guys buying this? I'm going to take a note. Buy ? 750% move is great. I mean, I don't know if this will go into price discovery though. If it does, maybe only a little bit higher, kind of like Cardano did in the 2021 cycle, where maybe this thing only gets up to like 7 cents, but still that's 1,000% move again. This thing is known to do 1,000% moves. So from where we are right now, up about 1,000% is just slightly new all-time high. That's kind of what I do think a lot of altcoins will do this cycle is they will be very elusive. They won't do the things that you want them to do, but they will still have major upside moves. And it's all you could really ask for, right? It's to profit. That's the point of this game. Now let's go over to Kaspa. It's been some time since I've looked at this. Whoa, okay, so we finally are in a horizontal trading range with this thing. Finally. How's the Kaspa community doing? It would be interesting to know. So we now have had our first decent correction on this shit of only 74%. Yeah, this thing has just been on a tear and then finally it's stalled out. So I would say the true end of that move was about over here in November 2023. Oh, so it's been years. Like now, it's been a year and a half. So the hype must be gone, right? Is that the case? And then I guess when it broke down into the start of the lunar cycle, it was like really like the hype is not there anymore. But this thing was hype. I mean, all of 2023, no one shut up about this thing. And great. I do think it was an amazing investment opportunity. And for those that are still holding it, that bought in back in 2023, you're doing very well. Don't be stupid. If you are somebody who bought this thing at 0.005, you're up 2,000 fucking percent right now. So I don't know what you're waiting for. If you're feeling sketchy, could this go into a new all-time high? Sure. I mean, it's done multiple all-time highs throughout its entire existence, and it's still in price discovery to the upside. Excuse me, which is rare. I mean, if you were to take off this fractal over here, this thing's up 47,000%. So this is what I was worried about with this project when I was doing reviews of it. I was saying that this is going to go into horizontal trading range and it will have a major correction in the midst of this whole thing that we're doing right now with Bitcoin into the end of our cycle. This hype can't last forever. And after something already does a 50,000% return, I mean, expecting it to go higher and higher and higher and higher is just not how it goes. So anyways, recently, we finally seen a pretty substantial correction on this local fib pull. We've made it up into the golden pocket, similar to what Ethereum has just done, rejected there at a level that was our support. Okay, so this was a macro support, but let me just show you one more level. So you see over here, we were trying to hold this level and we just couldn't on this project until it broke down deeper. We're back in the middle of that. So we do like to spend quite a bit of time around 10 cents to 12 cents. And the could be spending a little bit more time here up until Bitcoin dominance fully rolls over. So just keep that in mind. I think this is a opportunity, but I'm not sure about the ROI here. Can it go to 50 cents? Sure, 300%. You need more price discovery. I would rather bet on some things that haven't already done a 50,000% move, personally. But if you're somebody who's been holding this and you're handsomely in profits right now, then congrats. Great job. No matter where you were buying this anytime before 2023, end of 2023, you're in profits. That's not the story for everyone. Okay, so don't be greedy. If this thing comes back up and starts breaking out, you should definitely have an exit strategy ready to implement on this project. Caspa. The graph. What's up here? It's been a minute. GRT. Okay. So GRT is very limited in data. Goes back to 2020 December. We have pretty much the luckiest time for a project to launch because it was launched after the C19 crash and it just got to ride the wave of everything during the Fed dumping money into everything, printing money to oblivion. So this thing launches and it immediately goes up 2,500%. Woo. Now it's had a correction of 98%. And if we mark from this top around the 888 fib, we are looking that it's still down 94%. So this is not good. Why? Well, because we don't know its resilience. If you existed before the C19 crash and we got to see how you experienced that chaos and then you recovered and went through whatever, then we at least know how resilient this is as a hodl project. Has this been a project to hodl? No. Has it been a project to trade? Sure. I mean, just right here, this was a 300% move. I bet this was a 400% move, 500% move. This right here, another 300, right? Or 200% move. So lots of chop. And if you're cool with trading chop, then you can make a lot of money on these altcoins. But this had a major support trend line, just like Ethereum, and we finally broke below it too at the same time as Ethereum. So I'm going to go ahead and guess. If ETH recovers back to all-time highs and also pushes into price discovery, this project can make it back up to the top of the golden pocket or maybe the 888 fib. And that right there is an opportunity, guys, because that's 1,500% from here. So this looks like absolute shit right now, but that's a good thing, right? You want things that are down, beaten, and bruised, and you don't want to be buying things that are near tops, like Bitcoin, because there's not much ROI there. I mean, Bitcoin, you would need, let's see, to get a 200% move on Bitcoin, you need it to go to 300K, right? Do you guys think Bitcoin's going to 300K? Maybe we do, but I mean, shit, do I want it to go to 300K? Yeah, because if it went to 300K, then every altcoin we own is going to go up fucking 20, 40,000%. So you should want that, but at the same time, you understand where I'm coming from? We didn't see everything go into new all-time highs in 2021 during that alt season. Some notable examples, XLM. You all remember that. What about XRP? You could blame the Ripple SEC case if you want, but still, we saw XRP go up 1,000% from that crash. When the lawsuit came in and a lot of major exchanges started delisting XRP, right? It still went up 1,000% from that crash. So it got to have an alt season, an isolated alt season, but it did not break higher into price discovery. So there's also many other examples. Dash, Monero. I mean, you could probably name any OG coin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum Classic, I believe, didn't even go into price discovery. So buying these beaten and bruised projects in the last minute is kind of what makes it's what mints millionaires. I think one example we have of like how these sorts of last minute things can go before we just see straight line breakouts. Let me point to, I mean, even Ethereum is a great example. Let's go to Ethereum right here. We have from this moment a 1,000% move in under 200 days for ETH, the highest market cap project. Okay. I mean, what about Theta? Had an insane move during the last cycle. So at the same point, pretty much, this went up also almost 3,000%. But if you bought from the July fractal lows, that's at 8,000%. If you bought from the C19 crash, which is also the macro support, what is this? 20,000% move on Theta. So where's Theta now? It's at the same sort of level as what we were just looking at with Graph. It's in the dumps. So if we were to get a move up to the 888 fib, we're talking about a 1,000% move. A move back to the prior all-time highs, we're talking about a 1,700% move. Is that impossible for Theta? Well, I just showed you that it's not impossible. We've literally done it before. And what's crazy is if we look at the macro on Theta, where we're back testing is the same level we launched from back here that I just told you about, where we went up 2,700%. We're back testing that level now. We're leaving that level now. So just think, even at the double top, we're talking about 1,700. That's a big move, guys. That's a very nice opportunity. I'm not telling you to invest in Theta, by the way, but I think a lot of charts look like Theta. A lot of charts are going to have that similar. I mean, Zilliqa, it might be another example of a project that I used to invest in back in the day. I have not been lately, but Zill is probably another great opportunity too, to just get in one of those beaten and bruised projects that's still near the lows that has a lot of upside potential. I mean, look at Graph getting back to the top of March 2024. That's an almost 400% move. 300% move is great, right? So we're going to wrap this one up here. Anything that's below the 236 is a major opportunity, in my opinion, because when we're looking up to the top of the golden pocket, just that move right there on a macro automatic rally is 1,000%. So we haven't even had Bitcoin dominance roll over yet below 60%. Imagine that was to occur. Everything is going to rise with the Bitcoin move. So for now, we definitely have a crazy Monday ahead because we have the stock market pretty much fully recovered. We just had Bitcoin swipe up all the way to 107 minutes before I started recording this. It's now down about $2,000. We had a Sunday pump, which we know is not very typical. And in the 30 weeks, we've just experienced 3 examples. All of them led to a correction. So this is time to be cautious. This is time to expect crazy last minute volatility leading into this Bitcoin conference. And I've already decoded that today, so you should be well prepared in how that's going to go down. And when is next Sunday? Let's look at what date that would be. That would be the 25th. Fuck, that's like 2 days before the conference, right? So that's right before the new moon. So that's going to be a really special podcast. I will recap obviously everything that's going down since now till then. But in the meantime, you guys can expect a midweek update coming from me. And I appreciate and I'm grateful for every single one of you. Love you guys. Wishing you all a beautiful rest of your weekend in the Matrix. Much love.